Do you think that the current escalation in the Gaza Strip marks a shift in military strategies, or is it a continuation of what's gone before?
Well, unfortunately, Mark, I cannot say it's a shift because this kind of disaster and catastrophe that we're seeing in northern Gaza has been going on right now for nearly 2 months. I mean, for 2 months we've been seeing, this kind of near daily killing of scores of Palestinians. Of course, after the ceasefire that was reached in Lebanon and went into effect, late on Tuesday or early Wednesday. There's been, different speculations on whether Israel would, and Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu would be ready to accept ceasefire in Gaza, similar to Lebanon, considering that, whether in Lebanon or in Gaza, the notion of ultimate utter victory that Netanyahu has been claiming has never been achieved. So, probably there's been a lot of pressure internally right now in Israel saying if you were able to reach a ceasefire in Lebanon without achieving all your goals, why not reach a similar truce in Gaza? So, of course, there might be an expectation for an escalation in the Israeli attacks more than the massacres they've been committing over the past 2 months and the starvation of the Palestinian people, perhaps in preparation for a possible truce, not even like a kind of a real ceasefire, especially before current U.S. President Joe Biden leaves the White House on January 20. So maybe, Netanyahu, with this escalation in the Israeli military establishment, are seeking to put more pressure on Hamas to accept conditions which they have said they would not accept before, such as a ceasefire in return, while they would still have Israeli occupation troops inside Gaza. The issue of maintaining troops along the border between Egypt and Gaza, whether this could happen, the withdrawal of Israeli troops could happen over a gradual mechanism rather than just immediately, as Hamas has asked before. So, again, there are different speculations that whether or not we're going to be able to reach a ceasefire in Gaza, but certainly President Biden, considering his statement yesterday that it would be practically, I am quoting, crazy to continue those daily massacres in Gaza, waiting for Trump to take over on January 20. So maybe we can see some contacts in the coming days and weeks, including Egypt, Qatar, Turkey, and the United States, in hope of pressing Netanyahu to agree for a ceasefire in Gaza similar to Lebanon. But certainly it won't be on definitely favorable conditions for Hamas after the cessation of hostilities in Lebanon.
Mr. Dawoud, do you think that then that this particular intensification in central Gaza is connected to the ceasefire in Lebanon?
Again, you see intensification. I'm really kind of puzzled about this word because today, nearly 70 Palestinians have been killed at least in attacks on Beit Lahia in northern Gaza, which is similar to figures we've had in recent days and weeks. But right now there is this kind of point of view circulating that Israel would escalate attacks in Gaza even further, which means, unfortunately, more killing basically more civilians. There is no, in terms of military targets, Israel has occupied the entire Gaza Strip. There is really nothing more they could do inside Gaza except on killing civilians and destroying homes and destroying houses. There is certainly a very serious fear that Israeli operations, particularly in northern Gaza, are aimed at emptying that part of Gaza, despite the fact that entire Gaza is a very small place, 360 square kilometers.
I wanted to ask you about that. What do you think are Israel's objectives? What are they trying to achieve?
Well, my fear, to be honest with you, on the medium and maybe longer term, to a certain extent, Israel will insist to maintain occupation inside the Gaza Strip, and that if we're going to see any withdrawal, it would be over a gradual kind of long period of time. But again, we're having an extremely right-wing coalition in Israel right now with Ben Gvir and Smotrich, basically asking for the annexation of northern Gaza. And you've seen yesterday a government minister visiting the borders between Israel and Gaza, accompanied by top settler leaders to discuss the chances of rebuilding settlements that were removed in 2005. So maybe within this kind of revenge attitude, revenge spirit that Israel has been having since, October 7, 2023, they kind of see that the punishment for the Gazans would be to confiscate basically part of Gaza and rebuild those kinds of settlements. But perhaps, there might be some sound, voices, some kind of rational, let me say, or sane voices within the security establishment would recognize that, having these kinds of settlements in Gaza means keeping many troops there, being subject to attacks again, as the situation was before 2005. So it's not an easy option to claim that they can, empty northern Gaza and restore settlements there. But unfortunately, again, there are lots of factors at play. The President Biden's remaining nearly 7 weeks in office, Trump taking over with another extreme team. That's another extremely worrying issue. The team that Mr. Trump is bringing in to look over the Middle East, whether the Secretary of State, the UN ambassador, the member of the House, the Stefanik, the Israeli, the American ambassador to Israel, Mr. Mike Huckabee, they are like hardline Zionists, which definitely is not a very positive sign on what kind of settlements we're going to see. So it's a very wide, complicated issue that involves not just Hamas, but Hamas, Iran, all the other actors at play. And I'm afraid that the main victim for all of this will be the Palestinian people. It's very heartbreaking to keep on increasing the numbers of people who are dying there. Just a few days ago, we crossed the 44,000 threshold. Right now, we're getting into 44,500. Soon, we're going to get into 45,000. And all this is happening while the United States, the key supporter for Israel, is not just providing them nonstop with weapons, but also diplomatic cover by preventing UN resolutions coming out from the Security Council, ending one of the worst massacres and genocide wars we've seen in many recent decades.